I'm Lodden Harp, and today we're going to be discussing what stories are and why we study them, from chapters 2 and 3 from Signorelli's Story Branding. We can go ahead and begin. So, one of my first memories as a little girl was sitting on my mom's lap as she read me stories. I'll Love You Forever by Robert Munsch was my favorite story of a mom and her little boy. This mom loved her son, and as he grew up, the mom felt like she was losing her little boy. At the end of the story, her son returns to take care of his mom. It was a sweet story of the love between a mother and son. It always made me want to be like that son one day to take care of my mom. It imprinted on my heart. As you know, stories have been here a while, since the beginning of time. Stories remain stories, but culture is continually changing. Technology has flooded our society with various ways to communicate and tell stories. But with this flood of technology, there has been a counterbalance, the human touch. Right brain skills such as storytelling are becoming more important as technology takes over the left brain skills. We, as a culture, are having to learn how to adjust to make a highly impersonal communication process personal. In an effort to bridge technology with a personal touch, we can use technology to communicate stories in an effective and personal way. As you click to the next slide, we are going to begin connecting stories with branding. Signorelli quotes the story factor, inspiration, influence, and persuasion through the art of storytelling. His quote read, "Clothing truth in stories is a powerful way to get people to open the doors of their minds to the truth you carry. This is clothing truth, making truth real for others. So, by clothing truth, making it real for others, we are telling stories that align with the already established beliefs of the individual. We're not explicitly stating how we want individuals to think or feel. We're inviting them to think and feel for themselves. It puts the responsibility on the receiver, the audience, not the advertiser. So, take into account this clothing of truth as you turn to the next slide. Successful brands such as Harley-Davidson, Disney, and North Face all clothe truth with their brands. Clothing truth has probably been a major factor in their success, actually. These brands clothe truth by promoting the bigger causes they support and life causes their audience can identify with. Truths we share. Because these brands clothe themselves in these truths, audiences are more welcome to anything they have to say. Their trust has been gained. In regards to branding with stories, Signorelli states, "If we think of our brand as a story, we go beyond looking for ways to find buyers. We start looking for ways to find believers. This builds a prolonged relationship with buyers that goes beyond one visit at the cash register." I wonder, though, how much influence clothing truth in a brand has on revenue. Here, these successful brands clothe themselves with truth and are extremely successful. But these are great products as well. I think that when studying branding, the product can't be dismissed. It has more influence here than we're giving credit. I love Disney. I honeymoon there. I love the world that they create and the fun memories. Their brand. But the rides are fun and the food's good. Their product. It's hard for me to differentiate the brand from the product here. I feel like they both coincide. You can have a good brand, but if your product is bad, you'll still fail. If you have a quality motorcycle at Harley-Davidson, quality materials at North Face, and quality facilities at Disney World, you'll succeed because there's such a strong brand backing it. Their brand, their truth is probably what motivates me to support them, but I want to believe that they have a great product as well. As we turn to the next slide, we will be addressing the differences between story branding and storytelling. They aren't the same. Story branding is a strategic process on how stories are formed. It is used to enhance a brand's appeal. Story branding encourages one to think of a brand as a story. It's about getting to the best definition of what the brand story should be about before it's told. There are several creative techniques one can use as a story brand. This can be telling a story, providing a demonstration, using visual metaphors, or using any other communication device. So now, as we move to the next slide, we're going to talk more about putting together a story. Signorelli states, Story branding utilizes the way stories are and have always been constructed and applies this knowledge to the brand communication process. So, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just strategizing it a little more. We must think of our brands as stories. In these stories, there are well-developed characters, plots, and themes. This organizes and simplifies our thinking by helping you gain a better perspective on what you're really trying to accomplish by replacing vagaries with clarity. Simplifying thinking helps you effectively communicate to others. You'll be better understood, and everyone associated with your brand will more capably enhance its effectiveness. I can't help but think of the general public, though. Are they really going to see the well-developed characters, plots, and themes having an organized thinking? Do audiences actually process these different aspects when hearing a story? Just a thought. In conclusion of Chapter 2 on the next slide, we see that this is just the beginning. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to paraphrase Signorelli in these next few points because he states it so well. So, if we think of our brand as a story, we go beyond looking for ways to find buyers. We're looking for ways to find believers. Story branding utilizes the way stories are and have always been constructed and applies this knowledge to the brand communications process. And story branding will help you help organize and simplify the way you think about your brand and help you better communicate that thinking to others who have a stake in the brand success. We're going to graduate on to Chapter 3 in this next slide. In Chapter 2, we discuss the importance of connecting stories with brands. Well, how can we connect brands with stories if we don't know what a story is? Lo and behold, we're going to see what a story is. Signorelli quotes Kendall Haven, here stating a story is a narrative about a character dealing with an obstacle to achieve some important goal. So, a story has a character dealing with an obstacle to achieve an important goal. What makes the story so good, though? I read some really bad stories. You see, the difference between a story and a good story is that a good story has personal relevance. Like I said earlier, a good story connects to the reader personally. It's something one connects with internally, like the story my mom read to me. So now we go with a good story. Now we know what a good story is. Let's go on to the next slide to deconstruct different parts of a story. In a story, you have a plot and themes. The relevancy of these two elements to branding provides the foundation upon which the story branding approach is built. The plot is comprised simply of the events that tell a story. The themes are the messages, lessons, or morals that give a story meaning, and is surmised from the story's plot. To explicitly state it, the plot describes events and themes provide meaning. Let's flip to the next slide where we will dive more into what plots are. Plots are the really logical, rational, sequential part of the story. One of the most important functions is to provide audience with an understanding of the happenings that make up the story. Plots are logical. In plots, problems are solved and questions are answered. Overall, it's interesting that as humans, we have a need to make sense of plots or we are left unsatisfied, hence all those mystery novels. Now, let's check to the next slide and learn more about themes. Themes are the story's why, the purpose for telling the story. Themes are most definitively the lesson, message, or moral of the story. But, you see, as we discussed earlier with story branding, companies are looking for believers, not buyers. They're looking for someone that will believe in their purpose and product. With theme, we have to decide if the theme is relevant to believe in. Whether or not we're are going to go along with a theme depends on how well it fits within our belief structure. So, let's compare plots and themes in this next slide. So, the logical side of our brain processes plots. Themes are processed on the emotional side. The response to themes can be driven by deeply held feelings below the threshold of consciousness. In relation to a product, plots are the branded product, and themes have a lot to do with the product's brand itself. In our next slide, let's connect plots and products. Products are the logical item. It's what you see, hear, taste, smell, etc. You know what it is. There's no guessing. So, to spend your money on something has to be pretty worthwhile, right? At least for me it does. Plots are a lot like products in that it needs to provide a pretty worthwhile experience for a customer to spend his time or money on it. Remember, plots and products are logical. They're meant for a functional purpose. I feel that we really need to focus on the product and story branding. The plot holds a story together. Without a plot, it can't be a story. When thinking about story branding, I feel that I'm focusing so much on the brand that I forget about the product. There needs to be a balance in the product-brand relationship when story branding. Products are described as the logical item, what a consumer buys. But I feel there's so much more to the product. A cashmere sweater is a product. Of course, the branding can be luxury and comfort, but the cashmere sweater is still warm and practical. What happens if it's itchy? That's the product's fault, not the branding. People won't buy it. There are so many factors with the product that can affect consumer behavior. I don't want to push the plot or product aside once again, but focus on how they coincide. It's dire to not forget about the product when story branding, but using its strengths to help brand the product. Okay, let's leave plots and products to flip to the next slide, to themes and brands. Plots and products are logical. Themes and brands are not. They appeal to emotions. Brands can provide the emotional connection that plots and products need in order to engage with their respective audience. Signorelli says it best when he states, "A brand with a well-developed theme can make its products meaningful and memorable because, in addition to some functional purpose, the brand itself can help its audience identify with important values and beliefs that are strongly adhered to and shared by other members of that audience." That's the emotional appeal. Something you can't see, but you feel and believe. Themes are the emotional appeal. In this next slide, we're going to discuss how you can convey these themes to others, making it their idea. The importance of conveying a theme is to not explicitly state the theme or main idea. This is why storytelling is so useful. Storytelling reveals meanings without committing the error of defining it. Signorelli defines the act of not explicitly stating what we want an individual to think or feel, but still conveying it, as theme think. He states, "Theme think is what we do when we cast the theme as meaningful without arguing in favor of its meaningfulness. The audience develops its own view of the meaning when they aren't told to think it at all. They're coerced through theme think." A scenario is mentioned in story branding that involves Signorelli's advertising marketing agency and their client, a casino. The casino wanted to attract the hip and cool crowd. In an effort to do that, they produced advertisements stating, "Catch the vibe," or "We're happening, are you?" They were explicitly stating that they were cool. You're not cool if you're trying to tell others you are. Signorelli and his team developed advertisements that associated the quality of cool, but never informing audiences that the casino was cool. This allowed the audience to develop a guided opinion without it being forced to them. It was successful. So, like this example, brands like story themes are better left to interpretation than explanation. Let's flip to the next slide. Our last subject, reinforcing the audience. It's all about the audience and what they think, or have come to think about what the brand represents. Signorelli quotes Seth Godin in his book, "All Marketers Are Liars." He states, "The best stories don't teach people anything new. Instead, the best stories agree with what the audience already believes and makes the members of the audience feel smart and secure and reminded that they were right in the first place." We see, overall, that the best stories agree with what the audience already believes. Now, in this last slide, let's conclude the basics of what we talked about today. Stories don't tell us how to think or feel, they invite us to feel for ourselves. Story branding utilizes the way stories are and have always been constructed and applies this knowledge to the brand communication process. A story is a narrative about a character dealing with an obstacle to achieve some important goal. The difference between a story and a good story is that a good story has personal relevance. Story has a plot, the explicit information and themes, interpretive information. The best stories agree with what the audience already believes. So, my question for you is, how has story branding affected you as a consumer? Have you purchased products because of the branding that has been presented to you? Are there particular products that you have become more of a believer than a buyer? I hope you've enjoyed learning about what stories are and why we use them. Have a great day.